You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a wonderful Saturday. We got a great guest. We have a very interesting mystery. Hopefully doesn't turn into a murder mystery, but it's something that Ashton and I have been talking about. I've been paying attention. He first brought it to my attention a few weeks ago, or about a week and a half ago, I think I saw it. And I don't understand why this is not getting national attention, but I want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, all of those good things. And Ashton, how you been doing, man?
Hey, been doing well. How are you?
I've been great, man. Thank you for coming back on the show. You're always one of my favorite guests. You're my favorite nerd in the world, Ashton. I love you.
Love it. You're my favorite special forces guy. And there's several that I have as well. So that puts you up there.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. So a lot of craziness going on in the world. We got the war with Iran. We got the Savannah Guthrie thing going on. I just heard that we apparently just bombed Ecuador. I'm trying to look into that a little bit more. So a lot of stuff going on, and I understand why certain things might get buried. This is super crazy. So for people that don't know, just kind of let them know what's going on with the general, what is his name? McGinnis?
Major General William McCasland. So this guy disappeared a week ago. It's been a week already. And I think a story came out like the next day saying this Air Force guy, general disappears. And people were kind of, there was some rumors, speculation about it. And so I started to look into it and I realized like, oh, this guy's not a nobody. This is like an actual major person. One of the rumors that was out there, or I think it's been confirmed, is that he was advising the UFO community, specifically Tom DeLonge of Blink 182. There's like an email that was made public that this guy like reached out to Tom DeLonge and was like passing him supposedly information about like maybe secret weapons programs, or if you believe in flying saucers, whatever, that reverse engineering stuff. And if you look at his history, he's got a career 30 plus years in the Air Force as an engineer, as a physicist, and he became commander of the Air Force Research Labs in 2011. Now, this is probably the biggest thing. That I think commander of the Air Force Research Lab is like the top scientist guy at the Air Force. And Air Force Research Lab specifically, the reason why this is so interesting to me is that all the scientific papers that I've been studying from the government basically all come from the Air Force Research Labs.
Right.
The gravity manipulation, electric propulsion, ball. Top dog out of everybody out there. So the fact that this guy disappeared, number one, he's a high priority individual. The government should have been tracking him for sure, just because of the knowledge he has in his head. So people think, okay, there's only a couple things that could have happened here. The number one speculation is that he has dementia, that he wandered off because he's an old senior citizen. It was a silver alert, and people are saying, well, the silver alert is related to dementia, so maybe he just wandered away. Now, factually speaking, he left his phone at home. He wandered away and left his phone at home. Now, I've been hesitant to report, but there's now been a brand new post as of like yesterday from his wife that basically has ruled out the dementia thing. Basically said that maybe he was some mild concern, but this is not a situation where like this guy was known to just completely lose his mind and sleepwalk into the middle of nowhere without realizing where he's going. Right. And to me, that's significant because I think that what this means, and this is where I'll let you jump in and start giving some of your feedback and initial thoughts. To me, I go, okay, we're ruling out the dementia thing for now. Maybe there's a possibility there. I seriously doubt this is a suicidal situation. Usually you don't leave your phone at home, wander away. That seems like that's intent. So the only possibilities to me, as crazy as this seems, is either our adversaries picked him up or we picked him up. Like our Black Project programs picked him up. But somebody picked this guy up and he disappeared. Because in today's day and age, I don't see how you could just walk away and disappear without a trace.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't. Nothing makes sense to me other than exactly what Greg here is saying. He said, "Leave your phone there, get in." I mean, it's crazy to me that the Savannah Guthrie case is getting so much attention, and unless you're looking for it, you're not getting anything on this. Why is this not on Fox News? I mean, it's very plausible that this guy was kidnapped. To just relegate it to, oh, we just have an old guy wandering around for a week, by the way. I mean, the natural implication here is that this guy was taken. Anything outside of that, I mean, if somebody's on a silver alert, they're usually found within a couple of hours. They're decided to wander out in the woods. You at least have some sort of idea of what might have happened. We got nothing on this guy, and that is crazy to me, given his status and the fact that he is a retired general, and yet national news isn't covering that at all.
What is that? So let me jump in on this, because that's such a key point. National news is not covering this at all. And something that I think, the conspiracy theory knows is, like, you can't trust mainstream media to cover something, especially if it's A, super important, or B, that our own government is implicated in it. Something that I've personally learned, talking about MH370, no major media has ever even reached out to me to even talk about that type of situation. So it does, I don't want to go too down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but it definitely makes me wonder, why are they not talking about this major general that's missing, especially when all the circumstances seem to line up towards a kidnapping of some sort? And why is there no information whatsoever from the feds? There's not even been a press conference about this yet, as far as I know. Yeah. The FBI has been involved. We've heard nothing. It's not like they're not even trying to find him. I mean, I don't know how hard this can be. Tell me from your, special forces mindset, what does this seem like to you? And, like, what level of severity would you expect for someone of this high ranking, even if you retired a few years back, whatever, to just vanish,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Right before the show, I was looking up for, trying to find additional information. Was there any updates? Was there any newer news articles that were coming out? And there just isn't. Like, the idea that we can have a general with clearly a very high level of clearance, forget about the UFO portion of this. If we had somebody that was part of the national defense infrastructure, like this guy was, with the level of information and clearance that he had, to just go missing, and we don't even hear a single report on CNN, Fox News, or anything else, much less, like you said, what we would expect is at least a news conference, and we're not getting any of this stuff. Yet, Savannah Guthrie, who really in the scheme of things really isn't anyone all that important, like, that has been the national headlines for weeks and weeks on end. And yet we have this guy who is of great importance, kind of a similar thing. We don't know what's happening. We don't know if somebody took him. Clearly, look, I think we both know, given his experience, at a minimum, the NSA and likely the CIA, as well as the FBI, are investigating this, if they don't know what already happened to him. At least behind the scenes, that's going to happen. And the idea that we're not getting national coverage on this and we're not getting daily updates on this just makes it, it's the Streisand effect, right? Or let's put it a different way. We're having an effect where, because they're not covering it, it piques my interest even more.
Yeah. So do you want to hear another crazy thing? I mean, first of all, I totally agree with you. Like, absolutely. The fact they're not covering it piques it more. We should be talking about, people need to put this on the radar until there's an update, until we've heard something from this. I don't think this guy can just disappear. And this is the kind of weird, suspicious thing that, to me, could, in theory, at least be an intelligence community type situation going on. I don't know if you want to make someone disappear because you're pulling them into an operation, or you want to make someone disappear because they're a liability or something like that. This, and it seems crazy, but there's not a lot of situations where a guy's just going to vanish. Now, the reason why I bring this up, and I was even hesitant to report or talk about this yesterday, but somebody messaged me and said, have you looked at this one guy? And by the way, can you just change the view? It's bothering me so much because it's make us go, what? There we go. Whew, okay. This guy messaged me yesterday or a few days ago, probably. And in my DMs, he's like, hey, have you looked at this one guy, TBMS Time Ships? It's a person that I kind of follow on social media because they talk about electromagnetics and stuff like that. And they seem to like kind of be in the know. And you'll find several people like this in social media when you're researching this physics. They said, if you looked at his profile, I'm not trying to say that this is like the general, but he hasn't posted since the day the general disappeared. And I was like, huh. And I'm like, this is probably not right. Like, so I go look at the guy's profile. And I remember this guy specifically because when I was first came across him on social media, I knew this guy was somebody important or knew what he was talking about with respect to electrogravitics, plasma technology, stuff that like you have to know, you have to research it, right? Like I have to know that they know that. And so I messaged him, I say, who are you? And he sent me back this crazy response. This is verbatim, by the way. He says, I am nobody. I am unimportant. We should not talk yet. You do good work and God bless you, Ashton. So I responded. I said, well, that's an odd response. I got so much weird crap going on. No one's offering me any straight answers, but thank you for the well wishes. That was September 2024. So this is almost 2 years ago that was, and I only had one other interaction with him ever on this account. So the other interaction, I'm going to read this to you. His username is Electric Propulsive Spacecraft Systems, and is at TMBS or TMB Spaceships. He says, and before I read this, let me just tell you what his profile says. This guy's profile says Electric Propulsive Spacecraft and Spacecraft Systems Manufacturing Experience, retired 38 years active duty U.S. Air Force PhD engineer, AFIT, ATC, AFMC, which are apparently like engineering Air Force stuff. So his response to me randomly, I get a message from him. That, I told you, I've only had like 2 messages with this guy. That one was 2024. I get a message from him in April 2025. Over a year later. This was like 9 months ago. Just says this. I suggest writing a letter to DNI Tulsi Gabbard. Make structured letter structured. First paragraph, background on disappearance of MH370. Name the DNI owned systems by technical name. Ask her to task DNI IG to research who is doing cover up and where the plane went to. What was the operational objective and why did they kill everybody? Second paragraph, name the DNI systems that were watching the plane at the time. In the third paragraph, tell her you have been confidentially asked to write this letter from an individual on her side of the classification system. I cannot speak at this time. It is operational, in all caps, program, and I cannot speak to that. Take care and you will prove the naysayer wrong. It is obvious to me Ross's words came down from the top. This indicates an opportunity. You may not get a good response on the letter at first, but wait, things are buzzing at the DOE. So I get these messages from this guy. I go look at his profile. He hasn't posted since the same day the general disappeared. I say, okay, well, I'm still not going to post about this because it's like 0% chance this can be the general, right? So I asked Grok to cross-reference all those acronyms and everything, and it says this person, like, that is essentially the same thing that the general has experienced. In fact, that person could be impersonating the general. That's how close it is to that person. So I'm not sure what to tell you guys on this, but it's pretty weird. This guy stopped posting the same day. I cross-referenced the time, and that guy, he disappeared on the West Coast or in Mountain Time or something like that. And it's like he would have made his last post and then basically disappeared right after that. It's super bizarre. And I looked through his history the last 3 months. I didn't go that far back. He's posted at least every other day for the last 3 months. All of a sudden, he just stopped posting for the same exact time period this general did a week ago. So
if you're or in a DM, share that account with me. I've had there's a couple of guys that I trust. One of them I saw in this chat that has done some good work tracking down individuals. In the past, I've used it for death threats and things like that to see who we're dealing with, but they've done some good work tracking down and identifying some people behind accounts. So that may be something that we could pursue and take a look at. And the next thing you know, we're disappeared. Next thing you know, somebody's doing a podcast on Gary.
Yeah, I feel like, if it's a 1% chance too, or even less, you still should probably go down. And so I made this post about it yesterday, thinking like, okay, well, I'm gonna be like, definitely he's gonna post I'm gonna look stupid when I wake up in the morning, right? And he's gonna be like, hey, I'm not the guy, haha. He still hasn't posted. It was a day ago. He still hasn't posted. And now I'm going, okay, someone just can this guy post? Can we get some proof of life on this guy, please? Because if this guy is the general, then that is really crazy. Like really, really, really crazy. Especially because of that letter that he sent me in that DM telling me to go send a letter to DNI, Tulsi Gabbard. And this guy was supposedly advising Tom DeLonge. Now, some people probably saying, Ashton, you're getting a little too ahead of yourself here, but think about it like this. One thing I've noticed when I started doing this researching the missing plane, being pretty sure that we were looking at real videos of some classified technologies, I've had a lot of weird encounters like this, where like you can tell somebody's like in the know. Or occasionally people would send me like, I wish I could tell you what the people are saying about you on the other side of the curtain, stuff like that, You get messages like that. That kind of stuff does kind of happen.
There is a thing. You get enough, like when you're doing the things that you and I do, like you start to be able to scan an email real quick and like not credible, credible, not credible, credible. Like you get it. You get used to seeing, there's subtle indicators there who's legit and who's not. There's no doubt about that.
And I think they also, the ones that are like the white hat ones, like imagine hypothetically we have some technology that is super secret. There are people that want to get it out. They always say, well, how would they be able to keep this secret? People would be leaking it. They are, and they're trying to leak it to people that can speak about it publicly without going to prison, right? Where like in that letter it says it's operational. What they're saying is like the Gorgon Stare technology is still operational. If I were to talk about it publicly, I go to prison. We're still using those surveillance technologies. So that the psychological profile of someone like William McCasland, the general, he must have reached out to Tom DeLonge. There's no way a Blink-182 musician is somehow tracking down a general and getting UFO secrets from him, right? The general had to have reached out to him and been like, hey, you're looking for somebody. I'll give you some information, right? And wanted to get that information out. And that's what I think is happening. And that's why I think there's a non-zero chance that guy really is the general, because he's been weirdly creeping around in my replies, sends me that. If you go look through his post history, it's all about all this physics and science. And you'd have to be like in the government to know a lot of that stuff. Some of these papers, I don't think people realize, are just on classified systems. Like there's a whole classified survey they have of scientific papers and research that is not publicly available, that you have to be on the air gap network or whatever to have access to. I'm not saying it's all necessarily about UFOs, but you can kind of tell when someone's saying stuff about science and physics that's not exactly mainstream, that is probably comes from a place of additional knowledge.
Well, we don't even have to consider like extraterrestrial or exogenous technology. We can sit here and just talk about the fact, look, without a doubt, the United States government and our military are developing classified systems of all types, from propulsion to weapon systems to you name it. And the fact is that somebody like this, with the background that he has and the information that he has, would be highly desirable for our enemies and adversaries to get a hold of. So, I mean, even if because he's been retired for how many years now?
I didn't actually check to see the exact year he retired, but
it doesn't matter if he's been retired for 20 years. Like most of our adversaries are far behind us, and information and technology that is even 20 years old is still going to be relevant and important to, again, our foreign adversaries, and even people with the United States on a corporate level. Like they would want that information. And there's definitely as much money as involved in some of these defense systems and propulsion systems or weapon systems. Like the amount of people that could be suspects is numerous and endless.
You want to watch another clip? Because that's what people may ask. They may say, hey, how do we know this guy's actually important? What if I told you he definitely knows all about our nuclear weapon systems? He definitely knows about our most advanced hypersonic systems. He almost certainly knows about our fusion propulsion capabilities that are not publicly known, other than what I've been revealing and a few others. And he very well might know about the wormhole technology used on MH370 because he would have been commander of the Air Force Research Labs the year before that operation that we've talked about on your past podcast. So here's a clip I made from I can't who found this. I want to give them credit. I think it was Stochastic Scribe on Twitter. He's got a really good account. I think he found this AIAA, I think it is, one of these science conferences where he goes over and reviews the weapon capabilities and the research that they're talking about. And keep in mind, this is all just what's publicly available. So let's play this clip, and gives a lot of insight and realizing like this guy is probably one of the, I don't know if there's a list of how important people are, but he's got to be like in the top
Other
25.
important investments in this area of propulsion and aerospace systems are the
I'll redo it. There we go.
Other important investments in this area of propulsion and aerospace systems are the propulsive technology for hypersonic flight. You see in the image in the upper left, the X-51. We've flown 3 of those. We've learned something new from each one. We've got 1 more to fly, and we plan to fly it in April to milk what we can out of that set of test assets. This has been the very first successful hypersonic scramjet that burns hydrocarbon fuels. You see in the middle some interesting research, cartoon diagramming interesting research we're doing about energy efficiency, formation flying, mobility airplanes. In some remarkable tests out at Edwards, we demonstrated that we could in fact reduce fuel flow by as much as 8 to 11% for those airplanes in trail and the climbing sides of those vortices, and we could also do that with formation flying geometry that was within the capacity of the existing autopilot in the C-17. All of this aimed at research in reducing the demand for fuel. And I talked a little bit about the high-speed strike weapons program cartooned over there on the right. It largely a propulsion investment that seeks to bring the risk down for long-range hypersonic propulsion.
Yeah, and then there's another clip. I didn't have it there, but he also speaks about the AGM, the what do they call it? They just tested this missile, the nuclear warhead. What's the name of it? Someone will get me in the chat, but the AGM-3 or whatever it is, he says that they enhanced the inertial guidance, so like the autopilot capabilities of those missiles, so that they're compliant up until like 2030 or something like that. And keep in mind that video is from like 12 years ago. So that video is super old. And so right there, he's speaking, I'll kind of bring it down for everybody. First of all, the nuclear weapons capabilities we know about, they actually just tested one of those missiles. There's like if you look at the news, you'll see there's this big, huge like shot of us testing a non-armed warhead to make sure it's still capable. The hydrocarbon burning scramjet. The scramjet, I've learned, is basically as close as we can get till we get to a fusion drive. So essentially, they've gone from these ramjet engines, these spinning engines, and they pull out all the engine stuff in the middle, and then they're putting in their magnets basically and using MHD plasma in your engine, and that's how they can create these scramjet engines. He also spoke about the high-speed strike and basically how the strike system is essentially a propulsion technology research for long distance propulsion. And so this is where, like, I'm obviously speculating that they've been working on and figuring out fusion propulsion, but they can't say that, and clearly couldn't say that, 12 years ago. But that's what I think that they were getting to there. Now you could imagine if this is true and he knows about this, and even just the nuclear thing alone, though, our adversaries would be very interested, like on an episode of 24 or something. We need to call in Jack Bauer to rescue the good general.
We got a few super chats over here. We got Endless Summer Rose. Question for Ashton. 1, what does he think about the Diego Garcia mess with the UK? 2, why doesn't the military use wormhole technology to put ships in the Persian Gulf quicker?
Number 1, did you see that the UK supposedly stopped us from using Diego Garcia on Iran? What the hell does that mean? Why do these things keep being said and I don't understand what they mean? There's no, like, the words don't even make sense. Are they saying that we got secret weapons at Diego Garcia that they wouldn't allow us to deploy? Like, how would the UK determine what we do on our military base? Makes no sense to me whatsoever. But more and more and more, Diego Garcia is for me, that's my Area 51. That's where I don't care about what the aliens or whatever, but they got something creepy going on at that base. Terms of like people always ask, why don't we use, if you said we have this teleportation tech, even fusion technology, why aren't we seeing it get used? Guys, we're fighting Iran. Iran's like not even like our little brother. It's like our little, newborn baby brother.
We're using B-52s against them right now.
Yeah. We don't, and this is what people don't understand is like I think, especially if we assume that there is some really advanced technology, whether or not it comes from aliens or Tesla or ancient civilizations, doesn't matter. Then what we're seeing kind of makes sense because there's going to be the haves and the have-nots. Some people have technology that's up here and other people have technology that's way down here. And the people up here aren't going to use the best technology against these people down here. You use the stuff that's just a little better than what they have. Because that way, when they figure it out, they're trying to build this stuff, but you got the secret stuff way up here. So that's part of it. There's more complicated than that, including like mass production. Like, can they mass produce plasma orbs that can teleport stuff? Probably not 10 years ago. They probably only had a few of them. But that was partly part of it too, is that you want to get to mass production and not have people realize what you're doing. Because eventually your adversaries figure it out and now they got your weapons and they steal them. And this is what I think MH370 was all about. It was about China trying to steal our super advanced weapons and us being like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So.
Well, and do we know for sure that transporting people, weapons, something like an aircraft carrier, something that large is even possible? Number two, what's the survivability of that? What do some of these other systems like atomic weapons on board those types of things? How does that affect, wormhole technology? Something we're essentially theoretically talking about to begin with. Like, I'm just curious what your thoughts, and I know this is strictly your opinion.
Sure.
Not to mention, like, how much control can we take it from this grid coordinate and put it exactly on this grid coordinate?
Yeah. That's the amazing part. I think they've got it like
dialed
down
in
perfectly. That's the scariest part probably about the MH370 videos is the scale and the scope of what they're doing implies it's not the first rodeo. It implies it's not even an experiment that they're testing it. It's like they know exactly where it's going. Like the whole thing looks like one of those, like just in a trap has clearly got some purpose to it and an intent going along with it. So I think they've fully, and the only way that would be possible from you talk to any physicist, they would say they must fully understand physics. They must have a unification of physics fully figured out. Like they understand dark energy, they understand dark matter, they know what all this really means for the big picture. Because the only way you could have something that's like a precision teleport point-to-point system like that, and it's going to come out on the other side, the spot you want it to come out, is that you understand the nature of our reality on a completely different level.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. That's the secret. Like that's the thing that UFO people are never going to tell you. Because that's power. That information is power. The knowledge is power. What you can do with that knowledge is weaponize it. Turn it into weapons that can defeat your adversaries, that can discombobulate them like we did Venezuela. And I don't even know who even knows what we're doing in Iran. We might be deploying some stuff that's advanced, like isn't it the Strait of Hormuz or whatever right now where all the electromagnetic activity is happening, where like people's, that's almost certainly us, messing around. And that's us using directed energy warfare. We're creating a noise bath of electromagnetic activity that just knocks out all signals or scrambles them essentially. And if we can do it at that scale, I mean, it's scary, man. Sky's the limit.
What do you think it would take for the U.S. to deploy that type of technology?
These are the good questions.
To the point that the public would know about it. It would force disclosure about it.
This is why I talk to you, because this is what I sit there and think about. I think about like, what would it actually take for us to like get real disclosure where it's like undeniable? It's going to be really, really hard. Even if they were, first of all, it's going to take war with China or Russia.
And
it's got to be the big
existential threat.
Yeah. and they'd have to shoot a nuke at us probably, right? And we get to that situation, and the crazy part is they might even still let a nuke hit us. So the people that are saying like, hey, false flag attack, they're going to let us get hit by a nuke, that's actually not outside the realm of possibility. And it might not be able to stop it depending on what kind of warhead it's on. I mean, the hypersonics, some of these hypersonics are going at tens of thousands of miles per hour. Even those orbs might struggle at something that speed. But conventional ICBM going conventional speeds, up to Mach 10, we are going to be able to take out basically anything. And that's why we're building that Golden Dome, because that Golden Dome is basically, when we do that, we're just going to be like, well, the Golden Dome did it. No questions. Don't ask any questions about how, but it's going to be directed energy weapons from space, probably these plasma orbs. So I don't think the right question is necessarily, when are we going to see something that's undeniable? I think we're already starting to see that. It's going to be more of like, when do we wake up to this idea that, okay, the government has an understanding of physics that's a little beyond where we're at. And I think we've already seen that with like the directed energy weapons that are being deployed, and they're admitting directed energy weapons are real. We're advancing them. They've got that Helios laser zapping drones out of the sky right now.
Yep.
And the reason why this is controversial is that from the classical physics perspective, it's considered nearly impossible to beam energy over a long distance. Over a short distance, like very short distance, it's certainly possible. But energy falls off by the square of the distance, so square root of that distance. So very quickly, energy falls off. So that's why directed energy weapons have been conventionally hard. Now, it doesn't mean it's not possible. You can do things like impedance matching and other tricks to try to increase the energy efficiency and keep it high in your laser beams.
Well, and then environmental conditions completely affect all of that, especially when we're talking about lasers, like the ability for a laser to punch through fog or clouds or other atmospherics. Like all of that has to be controlled and manipulated in real time to be able to actually direct. And they can with lasers, they can do that, but it does get pretty wild, and people don't understand the complexity. It's like, oh, just put a real high energy laser up there and shoot something down 20 miles away. That's not how it works.
Also, just because you hit something with like you go in the tanning booth, it's not going to immediately get destroyed. So you've got to like actually destroy it too. So it's got to keep the laser on there long enough to take the thing down. So there are a lot of challenges. But if you then expand physics and say, oh, well, we can also manipulate space-time with directed energy weapons, and we can potentially have these, I think we spoke about it before, these scalar beams interfere at a distance and produce energy anywhere we want. If that becomes your understanding, now directed energy weapon that takes a drone out, doesn't even matter how far away it is, or at least it's no longer as big of a concern. And now beaming energy between 2 points, especially if teleportation like the MH370 videos is possible, then that means beaming energy over 2 distant points instantaneously is also possible. So this is where I'm going to say that we're going to be seeing this, and we are seeing it. And this is where everybody needs to be vigilant because of like the situation in Venezuela. I think we saw some of this technology get deployed in the discombobulator. And I think we are going to be seeing it get deployed in directed energy weapons. And then the other spot we're going to be seeing it get deployed is in fusion in general. So Donald Trump, he owns 52% of Trump Media Group, and they just merged with Helion Fusion. Or sorry, Tri-Alpha Energy. There's 2 big aneutronic fusion companies, Helion Fusion and Tri-Alpha Energy. So if you want to get invested in fusion, those are the 2 that I recommend to people because they have reactors, they're proven, and they're not just doing like heat up the box and try to get fusion to happen. They're doing like controlled fusion, like control your beams and try to make perfectly efficient fusion happen. And so Donald Trump just merged with one of those 2 companies. So you've got to sit here and wonder like, okay, why is that happening? Why did the president of the United States basically just absorb one of the 2 major fusion companies and also this bypass them having to go through IPO process? Now they become a publicly traded company without any background checks or anything like that because another company just bought them up. So you are seeing this technology come out. You just have to be observant and know what you're looking for.
Deep water, real quick. I want to go back to deep water's comment real fast. I lived in Mexico. There was a scientist from Los Alamos National Lab who went missing last year too. I remember hearing about that, and I just kind of chalked that up to a nothing burger. But I think that obviously with what's going on with General McCasland, this makes this more relevant.
Yeah, I didn't know about that particular one. Oh, yeah, here it is. Melissa Casillas, 53-year-old administrative assistant. Now, they were just administrative assistant, but still pretty weird. The thing I wanted to bring up around Los Alamos was the Epstein stuff, because I saw Eric Weinstein talking about this. I was stealing my stuff. No, just kidding. But he's saying that, the UFO topic is gonna be like center around nukes and Los Alamos and Epstein. And I'm going, this is what I've been saying for last year, is that UFOs are nukes. They're using fusion as their fuel source. That's what it's all connected to, nukes. And the Epstein thing is real. I couldn't believe this, but I looked at the emails from the leaks myself, and it says right there, like, they set up the Santa Fe Institute, the Zorro Ranch in Nevada, there next to Los Alamos, because they knew those engineers were like being laid off or whatever because the funding was being cut in the 90s. And it's like, no doubt they were using that for, compromising those people to get information out of them. Definitely, that was what they were setting up for. And in a different email, Epstein brags about being the one to have killed cold fusion in 1989. And I'm just sitting here going, you saw that one, right?
Yeah, I saw that email. Yeah.
That is insane to me, because this is what I've been researching in the last 2 years, and beyond any shadow of a doubt, they literally just covered up cold fusion. It's real. It's definitely real. And like, there was experimental validation, confirmation. It was reproduced like 60 times, not even just a couple of times, like 60 times. And the DOE did like the MSM thing before we knew what MSM even meant, and debunked it and convinced everybody it was just fake and to look the other way. And then 10 years goes by and everybody's just researching it again because it was real the whole time. And so Epstein was directly involved in that. And him and his buddies are bragging about how he went to Google and told Google not to look into it, not to research it. And you're like, what? This is like, there's like a real actual cover up here. Just it's incredible.
Yeah, Dom C was just asking, do you know if the FBI was looking for him? According to multiple sources, the FBI is allegedly looking for him, but there's looking for him and then announcing the fact that he's missing, and that's usually what happens with this type of stuff, especially somebody of his stature. And it's insane that it's not. That, again, we're worried about, and rightfully so. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be worried about Savannah Guthrie, but she's taking up all the oxygen in the room as far as media. And now we have, a literal hero with a lot of classified information that isn't being broadcast out there. That information is being put out. Does anyone know if he'd been sick, ill over the last 3 months, or traveled anywhere that may require shots for travel? I don't think that information's
his
available.
wife would have said something, I feel like, if that was the case. And it's almost like they're not trying to find him. Like, if you're trying to find somebody who's missing, you want to get on the news, you want to tell everybody, look out for this person, here's what they look like, tell us if you see them. None of that.
Or at least doing it quietly. Like, they clearly don't want national attention brought to this. That's my perception of the silence of it all is deafening.
Or tell people about it, because like, it's not like it's like, what would we be afraid of telling people about? Tell us more information about the circumstances, like, and we might be able to find him, like anyway.
Or they may know. I mean, and I think that is probably the conclusion that I come to, is like, they know who grabbed him, they know who has him, or they know what happened to him, or like you said, maybe he's sitting in a shipping container in Area 51 right now getting interrogated. I don't know, but it's clearly
how crazy would that be if like he was talking to people and he shouldn't have been, and like I was one of those people he was. Let's just indulge for a second. Let's just go crazy for a second. What if like that guy on Twitter was him, and it's not just me? What if he's whispering to other people and they get pissed off and they're like, "You're talking too much," and they just disappear him? He's just gone.
So should we state for the record now that you do not plan on unaliving yourself? That your brakes work fine on your car, everything is good as far as you know. There's no gas leaks in your house.
I mean, at this point, guys, I've said so much. If they want to take me out, they're just going to take me out. I'll take one for America. If we need need Ash and Forbes to disappear for America to be safe, you know what? I'll take one for the team. Take one for the team, chat.
You know what? I'll fight for your statue.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Check how many Chinese generals are dead or missing. versus my general's missing or dead. I don't know what my general, the U.S. general's missing or dead. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I think this is where, man, somebody, it was one of the replies kind of freaked me out. The first day I posted about this guy missing, like the day he disappeared, and I was like, this is so weird. And everybody was kind of on the dementia train right away. And one person replied was like, said, just kind of complimented me on my like attention to detail and noticing things. And I'm like, man, kind of just thinking like, you know, maybe this, like, because I don't know. I'm trying not to do too weird with this, but it's been a week and there's nothing about it. A week. Like if he just went out, was like, hey, it's time to end it all. I'm going to go, you know, disappear in the woods. Like, I feel like we would have found him. You know, I just couldn't have wandered that far away. It's almost like we're playing Grand Theft Auto and he didn't go with a car or anything and nothing with him. How far can you really get? You know, unless you have like a plan.
Thank you all that are become members and new members or re-upping your membership. Like I know Disney Up Boiler Up did. We appreciate that support, folks. Dr. Altoids, PhD in astronautical engineering at MIT, 2-star general, led major Air Force research programs in advanced aerospace, only 68 and left without a phone or watch, no history of cognitive issues. Candace will link to the juice.
Oh man, don't tell Candace about the missing general.
Without mentioning the Queen of Lies, but here we go. You ruined it.
He'll have killed Charlie Kirk, and she'll have already mixed this all together. Don't tell her, everybody. Everybody, don't tell Candace about this.
I mean, the fact that she hasn't pulled from some of your theories and your information, and
I was scared she was going to, or the other people were going to. This is why I had to disavow some of them, because I was ready for them. They were going to start being like, oh, it was the Jews that took MH370 and they were doing it because they control. I was ready for them to do all that. And I was like, okay, guys, nope, sorry. I was like, they're going to cover up that plane. If that's my options, you know what? They're just going to cover up the plane then.
I couldn't agree more. Ashley, this is one of your viewers. I'll let you handle it.
Okay. I think there's ties with Anthony Perrott, PhD in electrical engineering, plasma physics. Yep, he worked at Lawrence Livermore and then Los Alamos. Yeah, you guys, the people that worked at like Los Alamos, Lawrence Livermore, those are the two big ones actually. Like those are where we studied and worked on nuclear physics. So if you just look at physics and Einstein's relativity, we look at the idea of a black hole and we say, if we put all this mass energy into a small point, it will bend space-time so much that even light can't escape. So where would we expect to see the physics like that? Oh, in the high-energy nuclear weapons labs, the Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos. If anybody would have been able to understand gravity manipulation, it's going to be those people doing those experiments. And the reason why they can only figure it out and not like people in their garage is because you only see these effects. These effects only begin to become apparent when you get to these really high energy levels. It's almost like there's nothing, and then whoa, what's happening up here? Like that seems to be how it works. So I don't know if Anthony Perrott, probably knew. What I found is like Jean-Pierre Petit, probably Perrott, Hal Puthoff. A lot of these guys have a very similar unification view. And it's essentially that they take electromagnetism and gravity, and they say there is a coupling mechanism that kind of links these two effects together. Maybe it's that high energy level, for example, or high voltage. And I think that what I've told people is a bunch of people have figured it out. People shouldn't ever try to like fight about who's the most right or who got it right first. And they also shouldn't like get at each other's throats about, well, your view is right, but it's wrong about this. So throw that out. Mine's like, more correct and more better. Like we're going to have all the time in the universe to figure out who is the most right. Let's just get the gravity manipulation, the wormholes, the warp drives, the fusion energies. And then we can start deciding who's the best.
Why do you think that there's less of a collaborative attitude amongst all this stuff, especially in the, I would say, non-professional world? So for instance, you got a lot of haters, guys that are smart, they're out there hating on you. And what I will say is that you do not, I haven't seen where you do that back. which I really appreciate. Because the thing is, one of the things I've talked about before is, look, I don't know if Ashton Forbes is correct or right, and a lot of the stuff I can't prove. I'm not smart enough to do that. If you want to know about guns, tactics, man, I'm all over it. But what I can tell you is that every time I talk to you, I feel like you're an honest broker of information. And, if you're wrong, great. But again, the only thing I require is honesty. What I do see is when we have these people out there, whether they're my detractors or your detractor on whatever we're talking about, whether it's, conspiracies about who killed Charlie Kirk or conspiracies of whether or not wormhole technology exists. Like, there is a viciousness that comes across where it's like, dude, why don't you put your ego aside and I don't know, work. If you're really smart and you can prove Ashton Forbes wrong, you could probably work with him, or you say you prove Ashton Forbes wrong. You could probably work with him and get a lot more done together, don't you think? And figure out, maybe Ashton got a little bit wrong and maybe you got a little bit wrong, but you're both getting a little bit right. Maybe we get together and actually come up with some solutions, as opposed to just, beating your chest and saying, all the tropes that we both hear, like, oh, we're Fed agents or paid by the Jews. I'm sure you're being paid by the Jews to cover up the wormhole technology or whatever else.
No, your point though.
Why do you think that is, Ashton?
Yeah, I know this is a great point. I don't think anyone's ever really asked me that, but I've thought about it a lot. Is that one of the things I realized was that people don't want to collaborate like that. They don't want to find the answer. If you go watch some of my early live streams where I talk about the Redditors and the debunkers who are trying to prove me wrong, whatever, the thing I kept pointing out, which is still true to this day, is they were never trying to solve who's the missing plane. I would point out, do you realize these people are not honest brokers of information? They say they're trying to silence me because I'm telling misinformation, but they're not even trying to solve the plane mystery. I was the only one trying to solve it. And so that's what you realize, is they're not trying to solve it. The physicists, the academics, they're not trying to solve physics. That's why they don't want to collaborate. They don't want to collaborate because they're getting paid there by their university from their grants to do the research that they've been paid to do. And that's it. And it's sad to think that the universe boils down, or the world boils down to something that simple, but it does. And this is the reason why I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a hater, but I'm antagonistic against certain people and certain viewpoints that I think lack substance in some cases.
You're critical.
And that's the reason why I act that way.
Yeah.
Right. It's that I'm challenging these people. I'm going, hey, if you don't want to collaborate, then let's debate. Right. Then let's debate the ideas and put them out there, because they don't want to do that either, because their ideas don't really generally hold up to scrutiny in a lot of the situations. Or, they'll say that, oh, these ideas are so silly, that a wormhole silly, or free energy is silly. It's like, okay, well, let's debate the ideas then, because I can explain from the physics perspective with the peer-reviewed scientific papers that it's not that silly, that it's not.
Well, I'd love to see that. So anytime that you can get any of your detractors that want to debate, I'd be happy to moderate that. I think that'd be fascinating to watch, and I think would be good for all of us. Lucas Ray's Works, someone I just saw recently, and by recently I mean less than an hour or two ago. Do you think that we have known this since the Reagan administration? And was this tech they were talking about using in the Star Wars weapons?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they've known. And I was just reading this book. Where did I put it? Here we go. The Secret of the Three Bullets. Because now I'm 100% sure this is all related to nuclear weapons. A new generation of micronuclear weapons on the battlefield. And it's obvious to me, going back to the 60s and the sketchiness around the 60s, even the movie Oppenheimer. I don't know if you saw that, but all this antagonism of Edward Teller versus everybody else, and all of his suspecting them of being spies, it almost seems cartoonish when we watch that movie. You're like, why does he care so much whether or not these people might be communists? Why is he so paranoid about all this? It's because I think they figured out space-time manipulation, and they were like, this is a secret, even bigger than the nukes, where hey, we figured out physics here, and this has to be super secret. And they figured it out because they were setting off super powerful nuclear weapons. And Edward Teller himself designed a weapon that was supposed to be 10 gigatons, an Earth destroyer. And they never ended up supposedly building it. But you start to realize, these people were taking this science to its extreme. And now what I told you before about the black hole, realize if Einstein's right, these people had to have figured it out, because they're talking about making weapons that absolutely would do those things. And then sure enough, in the 60s, we banned nuclear weapon testing right after we started testing these super powerful nuclear weapons. Why? Probably because we figured out there's true destructive capability. So to your question, for that big super chat, did they know about this with the Star Wars initiative in the 80s? Absolutely. They knew about directed energy weapons. They knew about gravity manipulation weapons. And that's why they were inventing these things that they call them nuclear based. When they say nuclear, that's their way of getting around fission versus fusion. They don't have to differentiate what they're doing. And then with the directed energy weapons, like beaming energy from space, possibly destroying warheads with directed energy lasers that conventionally wouldn't be possible.
What do you think they were doing with Starfish Prime? And for people that don't know, they were basically launching nuclear weapons, high energy nuclear weapons at the Van Allen belt. I've heard two different things. Number one, they were trying to disrupt the Van Allen belt so that we could potentially get a spaceship to the moon, get through the Van Allen belt without as much radiation exposure. And then they also were talking about essentially trying to create a artificial nuclear belt that would potentially protect us from solar radiation and things like that.
Yeah, this is the one that I was just researching recently, the Starfish Prime. They were the high altitude nuclear weapons tests that they were doing. And actually, apparently now to this day, we can't do carbon dating correctly because we don't have a baseline because of all these nuclear high altitude nuclear weapons tests put so much carbon-13 into the atmosphere. It's pretty weird. Also added a whole bunch of electrons when they did this. But I think what they were doing is they were trying to punch a hole in the magnetosphere, the ionosphere, or something like that. That was what really stuck out to me. Because I think also, wasn't the EMP from that burst was much more powerful than they expected or something like that?
Yeah, it basically wiped out all the electronics in Hawaii, I know.
Exactly. And this is what you realize. What was I saying? The scientists realized there's a connection between electromagnetism and gravity. So you could imagine from these experiments, if Hal Puthoff is right, then those scientific experiments, those weapon tests would have proved him right. And Hal Puthoff has a theory on 0-point energy called the polarizable vacuum model. What he's saying is what we think of as empty space, you can change the properties of it by electrifying it. Like if you were to imagine taking your static TV, your TV has got all the white noise static going on, and just make it all coherent suddenly. If you're able to do something like that, it would actually change the properties of space-time, be gravity manipulation, change the permittivity of the vacuum, change the properties of it like that. And that weapon test, those EMPs that were doing those nukes, that would have done that. So if they did do that, and then they would have figured that out. So Hal Puthoff probably knows if his theory of 0-point energy, and that's the paper that I just said, the polarizable vacuum, that Tim Burchett in Congress held up and said, if you want any light reading about UFOs, read this paper. And I'm going, oh, that's polarizable vacuum, and there you go. Oh, and by the way, last thought, Hal Puthoff actually briefed Edward Teller. He had a famous sit-down dinner with him. It's not ever been revealed what he said, but there's photos of Hal Puthoff sitting next to Edward Teller. And I presume that he was telling him about his 0-point energy view, and Edward Teller's probably going, yes, we figured this out back in the 60s.
I didn't realize that the Soviets were doing the exact same thing. They were doing exactly that. They had their own program, Soviet Project K, and they were launching nukes into high atmosphere as well. Again, into the Van Allen belt, which is, I don't know, it's like 2,000 miles away from Earth's surface.
And do you know who their top nuclear physicist was developing their hydrogen bomb? It was Andrei Sakharov. And Andrei Sakharov is the guy that is credited with the idea of 0-point energy, actually. Hal Puthoff is the one that credits him as being the first one to think of this idea that space is not really an empty vacuum, that we have to think of space as being a thing of in of itself with energy built into it. And so you start to realize, these are a lot of threads all coming back to our nuclear weapons engineers, specifically our fusion bomb engineers. And you go, okay, well, perhaps they were able to figure out that these fusion bombs were big sources of electromagnetic energy that manipulate space-time. you know. And then to the book that I just read or was showing up, it says a new generation of micronuclear weapons is on the battlefield. Because you realize what you're going to do with that is why make it bigger? We don't need a bomb that's going to blow up the whole planet. We need small bombs that can make little micro black holes or wormholes or, you know, vaporize things. That's what we really want.
Texas Motherbird realized Ashton. I'm not sure what that means. Nuno Loureiro, a 47-year-old professor of nuclear science and engineering physics at MIT, as well as the director of the university's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, was shot multiple times and killed.
This is my other favorite one. This is how are there? I'm trying not to go down the rabbit hole, guys. I'm trying not to go full Candace Owens, and everybody's just, the world is making it very difficult for me here right now. This guy was a nuclear scientist and he was the top nuclear scientist at MIT's fusion lab. And he randomly gets gunned down by the guy that shot up Brown University like 4 days later. The guy shoots up Brown University, goes on the lam, nobody can find him, and then he finds Nuno Loureiro at his front porch, walking through his front door, shoots him in the back dead, and then goes to some kind of storage facility and ends his own life. How does that make any sense to anybody on the whole planet? This is like the general disappearing. So, and then they try to claim that like, oh, the guy that shot him went to school with him in Portugal 20 years ago. What? So what? That's like one of my old high school friends coming to America and killing me because he's like mad at me from something from 20 years ago when we used to live in Singapore together. That's insane. That doesn't make any sense. How do you even find out where he lives? I'm just sitting here. You didn't even know that? Oh
no, I didn't. I hadn't seen this one at all.
Okay, well then I'll play this clip for you because I got one of Nuno Loureiro. Because the first thing I do when these people like meet these crazy tragic ends, I'm like, okay, what were they saying online? Well, show me their content on the internet. And this guy, Nuno Loureiro, is talking about how magnetic fields can't be primordial. And I'll explain why this is important. So here's the clip. I think this is it. Let me see. I think this is it. There's two. I'm not sure which is the right one, but here you go.
Let us have a magnetic field present when Earth formed. Now you think that the outer core of the Earth is an MHD fluid. It's a plasma. Okay? And we know what its properties are. So you know that based on the properties of that fluid, if you have a magnetic field present when Earth was formed, it would take about 10 to the 5 years for that field to ohmically diffuse. But we know from paleomagnetism, so essentially measures of the magnetic field on Earth, that the Earth has had basically a constant magnetic field for essentially however long it's existed, around 10 to the 9 years. So you conclude from this that the only possibility is if the Earth actively generates its own magnetic field. Right? So the motions of the core of the Earth are such that via the induction term, they continuously generate the magnetic field of the Earth so that this term cannot just dissipate it away.
Okay, so, can they hear us? I can't tell.
Yep, no, we're good.
Okay, so what did he just say there? Why is that important? He basically said, we measure the Earth's magnetic field and we just do some simple math. And it's like the Earth's magnetic field should dissipate in like 10 to the 5 zeros. So it's a long time, but it's like a million years or something like that. But we're like, oh, but actually Earth's been around for like 10 to the 9. And then the magnetic field, when we actually go measure it, it's not even actually decreasing over a long period of time, like barely any change whatsoever. So what he's saying is that the magnetic field of our Earth can't be primordial. It can't come from the original development of the Earth because it should have gone away by then. So it must be getting actively generated. But the question is, where's that energy coming from that's doing that for that long of a period of time? How does it sustain itself? How come the Earth doesn't just become cold and die essentially, as opposed to staying active for such a huge period of time? And so he's implying there's some physics at play here that we don't fully grasp, don't fully understand. And it's not a direct connection to free energy, but it's kind of the first step towards realizing like, oh, maybe there is a way to get energy out that is more than what we're putting in there locally.
That's crazy. Well, and he just happened to be whacked in the middle of a active shooting event that was just completely random.
And the thing, no, that's the thing though, like, because it wasn't like while the shooting was going down. This guy goes to Brown University, and they can't even figure out why he shot at Brown University, other than the fact that like he went to school there once upon a time. He goes there, shoots the Brown University up, disappears for like days, like 3 days, and they were looking for him, and everybody's screaming how they can't find this guy. There's a shooter on the loose that just shot up school, and then Nuno Larerio dies, and people are like. And then people start speculating it was the same person. And you can see me on social media going, there's no way it can be the same person. That doesn't make any sense. They're like, well, it's 60 miles away. Why not? What he just randomly shot this random guy, you know? And then that's what the story comes out. Yep, this was the guy. And then right after he did this, he decided his quest was over, and he went to the storage facility and took his own life. Like, it's weird, man. Like, someone needs to tell me. I just want to know one thing on that. If there's officials watching, just tell me how he found Nuno Larario's address, his home address. I just want to know how he found the guy's home address, stalked him to his home address, and killed him at his home. Because if he was at work or something, and he went to the school and saw him at work, fine. But he found him at his home? Come on. It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, something like that being random is plausible, but so unlikely that it kind of rules it being random out. Sergeant Will. Hey, Gary and Ashton. Ashton, I sent you a message on IG about the general. Sighting of him yesterday in El Paso. He was known here at Fort Bliss and White Sands.
In El Paso?
That's interesting.
Wait. He was known here? You know why that's so weird? Because that profile, there's only 2 parts of that profile that kind of rule out the general. He talks about OU and UT. Speaking of University of Oklahoma and Texas. And so that means he's like, it would be whoever that person is must be Southern, must be, live in that area. But that's kind of close to where the general lives. And that guy just right there just connected him to Texas too. So I don't know, man. Anyway, if that guy ends up being the general, we're going on national TV, baby. Actually, probably not going on national TV if he ends up being the general. They'll definitely not talk about it if that guy ends up being the general. Whew.
I am seeing 4 days ago, the New York Post says the FBI joined search for missing retired Air Force general with ties to UFO linked military base. Again, I haven't found anything with any credible reports using Google here that he was cited somewhere else. So any other information you have on that, Sergeant Will, feel free to forward to either one of us.
Yeah, I've been Googling. I haven't seen anything on it, so we'll see.
Any thoughts on Havana syndrome? Look,
No.
I think that they are energy weapons being used by the Soviets, well, Russia and or China. From 2019 to 2023, I worked for Department of State Diplomatic Security, and I was doing security work at embassies and consulates, and this was something that came up very regularly. There are a lot of people that believe that they are suffering from Havana syndrome more so than is being reported. I'll just put it like that. That's like, there's a lot of people that know, like, hey, I know this guy, this old ambassador, or, whatever his position was. Like, he was having some of these issues that can only really be correlate with Havana syndrome. So, I mean, I don't even find it that interesting. It's like, of course we have these types of weapons, whether we're directing microwave energy at somebody. I mean, there's a whole lot of different things that we could be using to target an individual and to cause some irreparable harm to them, especially to their brains. So none of it, I think it's real. I don't even find it all that interesting, to be honest with you. That's where I'm at.
That's a good way to put it. I don't even find that interesting either, because yes, it's just like anybody getting hit by any other weapon. Yes, we have direct injury. To me, the big issue is there needs to be a diagnosis code so our veterans can get appropriate veteran care for it after they get diagnosed, et cetera, or however they go through that assessment. But the other point is that Yeah, Russia has it. You know, it's just directed energy weapons. It's using the same physics. You can call it a quantum weapon if you want to call it that. In some cases, it's just a microwave weapon. But the idea would essentially. Oh, and one more point I want to bring up is that yes, I think part of the problem will be that how do you differentiate between people that really have this effect versus people that think they do, psychosomatic. Kind of like with long COVID, you know, where all of a sudden people are, I've got the long COVID now. Like, how do you even rule that out if it's psychological? Not sure. But with respect to what would this do to somebody? Like, how do you imagine this effect? Let's use the wormhole analogy. Let's use the Philadelphia experiment analogy. Imagine you're going through a wormhole, but you leave your arm outside the wormhole. What happens at the end, right? You show up on the other side, your arm's back at the other location. So whatever's going to happen there, it's going to be pretty gross. Or if you get out of phase, like if you're inside of a craft and you get out of phase, you might come out the other side and you're inside the wall of the craft, like in the Philadelphia experiment. Now imagine that somebody's doing this wormhole thing, but they're doing it to your brain, right? You could imagine how it's going to mess with the stuff in the molecules, the atoms in your mind, and probably do really bad stuff to you that would be, you know, a little bit esoteric, not necessarily going to be something that's necessarily you're going to be able to explain what's going on.
Oh, that's interesting.
I hope they don't ever do that to me, by the way.
Yeah.
Don't fry my brain.
Keep talking to retired generals and you just might end up that way.
We're going up the hit list here. We're going to be getting talked about in tomorrow's CIA hit list.
You might
Gary
want
and Ashton are moving up the rankings. They're in the top 10 now.
That's right. We'll share a hospital room and eat through a straw and finish our days out in bliss. Is there a reasonable position that reconciles aliens with God, Christianity as a Christian scientist, molecular genetics? I've always struggled with these types of topics. Nothing in the Bible. Ashton, I got my thoughts on that, but I'll let you. I don't know what, you know, I don't know if you're a man of faith, what you believe, or anything else. You know, so I don't know where you stand on all this.
Yeah, I've spoken about it multiple times. To me, there's absolutely no inconsistency whatsoever between faith and aliens, faith in this technology. If anything, it's actually the opposite for me. For me, the more I've learned about this quantum stuff, the more I've learned that there's definitely something magical going on in our reality. And I think if you go up high enough, you get to God. And I think that's pretty much undeniable for me. Aliens, I don't know how anybody thinks there's any inconsistency. And I want to speak real quick to this. They're trying to push this narrative that like we're not going to get disclosure because people are afraid of demons or something. That just seems stupid to me. Now I want to hear somebody actually say that on the podium because I don't believe anyone actually thinks that. I think they're just saying that as an excuse because even if there are demons, if they're aliens, whatever, it's not going to make people's faith get destroyed. It's like we can just incorporate that into our faith. Maybe aliens are demons. Boom. Now we've reconciled it. So I just wanted to bring that up.
I don't even, again, I think, you know, I don't buy into the idea that aliens are demons. I think aliens are aliens, demons are demons. That's just my personal thought. And folks, we just had Timothy Alberino on a podcast. If you haven't checked that out, I highly, we talk about
great. I love him.
Freaking just a great researcher, great Bible scholar, hits a lot of different topics and shares his thoughts. And, you know, I think you'll find that extremely interesting. So go watch that video. We're definitely going to have him on again. I'm trying to talk him into letting me go on some sort of giant remains expedition with him or something like that.
He's got me convinced the giants are real. I mean, that was, for me, was the craziest thing, like pretty far up there. And now I'm sitting here going, giants might be real.
I think, look, if you believe in the Bible clearly talks about giants. So, I mean, you know, I don't know where if you're a believer, like you're kind of forced to believe in giants if you really believe the Bible. With that being said, look, I think there's number one, you can go back and you can find news articles of them talking about finding the remains of giants. We have lots of, and I'm not talking like way back in time in history or anything else, fairly recent reports of Native Americans dealing with giants, talking about giants. So, and there's also plenty of credible reports that talk about the Smithsonian specifically finding, collecting, and hiding away the remains of giants. I think that's legit. Now, Timothy has his own theories, and I would recommend that you go watch watch that as to why he thinks that they are hiding those away. I don't know if I agree with what he stated, but he knows a lot more about it than I do, so he's probably right. That being said, going back to, there's nothing in the Bible that conflicts with aliens, or I mean, the Bible doesn't talk about everything. So anything that it doesn't talk about, like, you probably got to leave some area open for, there's just things that the Bible doesn't address. Where I think people start to get into this esoteric argument about, well, what about salvation for aliens? Well, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's another Bible. Maybe maybe when Jesus died for us, he died for them. Maybe they don't have souls. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to all that stuff is. But just because the Bible doesn't address it directly doesn't mean that there's not an answer for that. Just like with anything else, just because we don't have an answer for everything doesn't mean that it didn't happen and that there's not a plausible explanation for it. We just don't have that. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. So I think we agree on this.
Actually, the thing about souls might be more relevant than people imagine, is that because there already is debate over whether or not, like, an animal has a soul, right? And then that doesn't even get to whether or not does a tree have a soul. It's technically alive, but I think most people would say no, it doesn't have a soul. But what if we run across aliens and they're more akin to something like a plant or an animal than like our type of intelligence? Or what if they have like a machine intelligence that isn't quite the same as an organic intelligence? Like, these are the types of things too, which are going to throw the whole definitions out there where, like, you know, what you're expecting the Bible to teach you, you know, whether or not all this level of definition, whether the aliens have a soul and if they're going to be saved by God. Like, yeah, I think let's cross that bridge when we get to it. And when we see the aliens and we see what's going on with the aliens. Because also, taking a different direction, what if the aliens look exactly like us? That would be weird. And to me, that would be like absolute proof there's a God. Like, if the aliens come down and they look just like us, I'm calling it. There's a God out there. We're made in his image, and so are the aliens.
Well, I think the more, like you said, the more that you look at the universe and see that, like, there's nothing that you can ever convince me that we are not of intelligent design. I mean, we're just too complex that I just don't think that evolution explains all those things. The other thing I would say, you know, someone that has studied the Bible at length, and I'm not a Bible scholar or anything like that, and I'm definitely not a perfect Christian, but with that being said, what I can tell you is I've read enough of the Bible to know what it does say and what it doesn't say. And what I do have a problem with is, given the text that we can reference that may or may not address this stuff completely, is I have a problem when people say, oh, I know because the Bible says X, Y, and Z. Well, what you just stated is completely open to interpretation. You can't rule anything out, and you can't say definitively one way or the other. I mean, even in the statement right there, it says God made man in his image. What does that mean exactly?
Mm-hmm.
Do we think like him? Do we look like him? Like, I know what a lot of people think that means. And I say that most of us would say, well, God has, 5 digits on his hand, our hands and our toes. I don't know that. What I can say is we clearly don't have the same exact capabilities of God. So there is a distinction between those two things. And just saying we were created in his image doesn't clarify all of that. And, we are obviously more prone to sin. We're more prone to a lot of stupid things. We're not as smart or as intelligent as God. Like, what does that mean exactly? And I would think that you'd have to ask God, because I think there's a lot there that's open to interpretation. And I think intentionally, look, I think part of this whole Christian religious experience is, like, we have a belief system because of that. Like, faith is the acceptance or the belief in something without proof. And I think that is part of this journey. And we're not going to have the answers to everything. I think that.
Yeah.
Really
When I went to Catholic high school, and we had Bible class for a couple of years, and what the nun told us, which I liked, was that, there's many interpretations, and how we translate the Bible to give us meaning is what's important. And so, some people may take the literal interpretation. My aunt was Jehovah's Witness. They took the literal interpretation. For me, it was hard to reconcile how people were living to 700 years old. Now, actually, I can actually kind of wrap my brain around it more. But so that's where I would tell people, is that I wouldn't get bogged down in all of that, because the Bible is meant to teach us and meant to be something that we interpret, not necessarily always take literally. So,
Yeah, and I think we need to interpret because just like what Ruger said here, is like some people want to interpret it however they want. And I don't think that's the right answer either. I think there's a lot of good Bible scholars out there that can take you through, I think, a very systematic and deliberate process of studying the Bible. And you got to take it in context. You got to put it in context with the time. Like there's a lot of steps to doing this, not just read it and believe whatever you want. I think that's this viewer says, then who created the giants? They said giants had 6 fingers and 6 toes. So that was the problem with this. Going back to one of the things we talked about at length with Timothy Alberino was that, the giants were allegedly offspring of the potentially fallen angels, but these were the Nephilim. So they were not made in the image of God. And that's kind of the point and why. And one of the elements or one of the things that people speculate was one of the purposes behind the Great Flood. I told you I'd be respectful of your time. I know it's the weekend. Sure. One thing I do want to hit on before I let you go here, though, is let's talk about theoretical propulsion. And one of the things that I don't think is necessarily theoretical, but we can start tying it together is, like, the B-2 bomber has, for a long time, people in the conspiracy world have talked about, hey, the stealth technology of the B-2 bomber, and we're seeing articles come out about it now. But this has been talked about for years and years. It's not the stealth technology of the B-2 bomber that is highly classified. It is absolutely the propulsion. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then maybe we can kind of dip our toes into some potential theoretical propulsions as well. What is the propulsion behind the B-2 bomber allegedly or theoretically?
Yeah, I was surprised to find this myself because, like many other people, I had thought that the stealth was the big secret behind it. But at least the rumor that I saw, who was the person that was posting this? I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head right now. It was on Gaia that I was playing the episode. But he was saying that the propulsion is actually what's secret. And right off the bat, this triggered the idea of those scramjet engines that I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast related to the general. Because what I've found from the UFO propulsion is that the propulsion is something called aneutronic fusion, meaning fusion that's not based on heat, fusion that doesn't release a bunch of neutrons, doesn't release a bunch of radiation. And you have to use this form of fusion for 2 reasons. One, because it doesn't destroy your reactor. So if you want to have your engine fly around for a long period of time, you need to have it be aneutron. Number 2, because of its efficiency. Aneutronic fusion produces electricity directly. So as opposed to boiling water and then turning that into electricity. Obviously, if you have a boiling water mechanism, you're not going to be able to have a drone flying around with a full steam cycle on it, So for these reasons, if you want to create a plasma propulsion or any propulsion system using fusion, you can't just use regular fusion propulsion. You have to use aneutronic fusion propulsion. And this means you have to use one of 3 fuels. There's only 3 fuels that you can use. One is lithium, one is helium-3, which is found on the moon, and the other one is boron-11. So it's possible that our B-2, although this would have been a long time ago, but it's still possible. It's possible that our B-2 is either using, some of them are either using fusion propulsion incorporated into their scramjet engines, or they are the precursor leading up to that. Because keep in mind, the way I think this played out is that the aerospace engineers working on the hypersonic crafts were the first people to figure out fusion was possible because of the huge temperatures they were dealing with in the engines already. And so these were the people that were the first people to figure out that this is even possible. And they started speculating, oh, we're getting to these temperatures that could be getting close to fusion conditions. Can we turn this into a fusion reactor? Now, obviously, I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if at a minimum, those scramjet elements were incorporated. You can play that clip if you want to. That's a good one.
Yeah. We got old George Norrie here.
Yeah, and I was on with George Norrie actually as well.
Really?
A year ago. He's a cool guy.
I bet.
Yeah.
God, the
He's a lot older than
technology
this
that
now,
we
though.
possess, Paul, is beyond what anybody would imagine, isn't it?
Yeah, here we're using it. We acknowledge the B-2, but the propulsion system is secret. And they even say that the secret thing is the radar invisibility, but that's to get you away from thinking about the propulsion system. It's really the propulsion system that's so highly classified.
What do you think the propulsion system is?
It was leaked by some Black Project scientists and published in Aviation Week and Space Technology back around 92, that a B-2 charges the leading edge of its wing to high voltage, and the opposite charge they dump in the exhaust. And so they're creating this huge field gradient across the craft. So that was the main thing they leaked. And based on that, and knowing Brown's patents that he published back in the 50s, and he was proposing this, that wasn't suppressed at all. It was exactly the idea. He showed charging leading edge of the craft and using flame jet generator. That was the other thing that the fellow mentioned, that they generate the high voltage difference in the jet engine itself using flame jet generator. Townsend Brown developed that.
Amazing.
That's crazy. Because right there, I mean, those concepts right there, that's all Thomas Townsend Brown. That's all just electrostatics, positive and minus charge, and using that for propulsion, which they're calling like the ion wind. That's how they're debunking this like ionic propulsion. And so those concepts are also the same exact concepts they use for fusion. So like this idea that you're going to build this electrostatic potential of negative or positive charge in a certain spot, that's what they do for fusion to try to get things to attract towards it. And what he said there, he says, oh, we're going to shoot this exhaust of negative charge and we're going to positively charge our wing. Well, why are you going to do that? Because the negative charge is going to try to chase the positive charge, which is going to give you additional thrust. And the stealth they use, even the stealth is cooler than they explain. It's not just the boxy shape of the craft. They create a plasma. It can even be a thin plasma, but like a little plasma that kind of covers the craft. And so any radar waves just scatter off of it. So basically the thing's essentially invisible. So the plasma, they call it a plasma sheath. You ionize the air with a laser and it creates a plasma around the leading edge. They probably just like charge the hull of the wing, and it probably just ionizes like a little tiny sheath of plasma around the wing. So it gives you better thrust, better lift, less drag, and gives you stealth in addition to that. So my guess is either those engines are just straight up fusion reactor engines, or there's some kind of weird modified version of a jet engine that can produce this electrostatic potential difference that they need. But either way, it's going to, like, the next evolution would have been, I think they turned it into like a fusion reactor drone after that.
Well, it could be a mix of both, right? We could have conventional engines out there that actually, produce lift at certain speeds, and then it, whatever. I don't know, but I think there's plenty of options on the tables. Sure. Let me throw up. This is a super chat from one of your folks. Chaotic Good 42 says, Is it possible that he intentionally went off the grid to avoid being a target for enemy sleeper agents? He lets his phone behind on purpose. It seems like that's maybe the most important detail of all.
Sure. I think that if I was going to rank the possibilities with the General William McCasland, number one, I would say we took him out. That's probably my number one choice, because I think it would be hard for foreign adversaries to conduct an operation on our soil. Like if I'm trying to pick somebody up, I'm waiting for them to go overseas, and then I would pick them up probably. So that would be number one. Number two is our adversaries picked them up. For me, number three is probably what Chaotic Good is saying, is like some scenario where he decided he was going rogue. He kind of reminds me of that Matt Livelsberger situation. You remember that with the Tesla Cybertruck bombing?
Yeah.
Well, if this guy blows himself up in a Cybertruck, then I'm calling foul. I'm blowing the whistle on the situation here. So yeah, I don't know.
No, good point.
Fourth option, he just decided he's going to wander to the woods. That was it. No more. Don't want to live on this planet anymore. But that one, I don't know, seems less and less likely. Go ahead.
To me, the two most likely scenarios is A, for punitive reasons and potentially for leaking information, he's now incarcerated somewhere. The other one to me is a foreign adversary decided that he was a soft target that, with a lot of information, probably didn't have a lot of security. I mean, the government may or may have pretty much forgot about him and didn't consider him a any sort of risk. So again, if I was a foreign adversary, that would be a perfect target for me. I don't need to know what's happening right now, but besides the fact that, if you're a foreign adversary, chances are your technology is years behind us. So if their technology is 10 plus years behind us, something that was relevant 5, 10, 15, even 20 years ago could fill in a lot of information gaps for them. And I think he would be a very valuable target. So
let me ask you this though. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you think he would talk?
Yeah, I think he potentially would, for a couple different reasons. Number one, if they were able to threaten his family, if they can kidnap him, they can reach out and touch his family. Number two, one of the things that we are trained in SEER and other types of training for elicitation or interrogation or whatever else is, look, they're going to get the information out of you. The idea here is that to stall, right? So if I'm captured on the battlefield, the information that I have with the operational environment and what's going on right now, that information is what is most critical. If I can stall for hours, days, whatever else, like, they will get the information out of you one way or the other. So the idea is to stall as long as possible, and to, if you have to, start feeding them misinformation. But eventually, look, let me tell you something. These people are very capable of everybody has a breaking point. We'll leave it like that. Now, what I would think that he would do, especially if, number one, he's 68 years old, all he cares about is his family. You start threatening his family, he's going to start providing information. He may provide misinformation, disinformation along the way, but I do think that they would get information out of him one way or the other. This doesn't work like a scene from Rambo where no matter what you do to this person, they're not going to start talking. You're going to start talking at some point, because they will
Let's pray for the best, because, man, I hope they find them, especially, in the interest of national security and just the interest of being a good human. Like, I hope they find him.
Maybe he just needs a break from his wife. Let's be real.
Yes.
You know what? This woman,
like, you know what? Going on a camping trip, getting away from the wife.
Let's look at play some golf or something. Hopefully that's the way it turns out. The last thing I want to hit with you before I let you get out of here, because I think this is really important. Look, I think you and I are very open-minded, and we believe in conspiracies. And I think a lot of our other viewers are watching this. And then you venture off into Candace Owens land. Like, for those of us that are open-minded, like, what are some things that you recommend to people to differentiate between total horseshit and just accepting anything as a possibility, compared to like trying to determine what's real, what's not, what's plausible, what's not, and to not fall victim to propaganda? That's really where it's at.
It's a great question, and it is a challenge. Absolutely. What I tell people from research is, I see people lose their minds all the time researching this kind of topic and content, because when you realize there's something there, it's like, how do you know where the limit is? How do you know what's real and what's not real? And when I first started doing this, that was one of the biggest challenges. Like, how can I tell someone I'm being fed bullshit if this science I'm looking at is real versus some other stuff? And the answer, you have to follow the evidence. What is the actual evidence show? Not just stories, not just speculation, but actual evidence. In the case of the MH370, it's the MH370 videos is what the evidence shows. In the case of William McCasland, obviously a lot of what we're looking at is speculative, what we're talking through. But we're speaking to a person who's experienced in special forces and somebody who knows a lot about the physics and stuff that's being hidden. So we're speaking from an area of somewhat enlightenment on the topics in general. But I think it's fine to speculate to some degree, as long as you are not being reckless about it, accusing people of wildly. So, like I said, the evidence is the most important thing that you have to follow. And then beyond that, I think it's just about being respectful to the people involved. So, in the case of MH370, the people that died, I never forget, or the people that are gone, at least at this point, I never forget about those people and their families, and remember that, essentially that's what that's all about. Same thing with William McCasland. Like, for the situation with him, is at the end of the day, it's about like him and his wife being missing. And we want to make sure that we're not being disrespectful to that. But at the same time, like, we should be asking questions about, like, where is this guy and why is nobody really talking about the fact that he's disappeared? Because as we just ran through today, there's not that many scenarios that make sense for what could have happened to him. And a couple of them are pretty damn sketchy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. It comes down to evidence. Like, you know, we start everybody. I think most people in this chat, and I know you and I are adversarial to our government. And I mean that in like, we want to hold our government accountable. We know that the government has lied to us. And it is a process of figuring out what's real, what's fake, when are we being lied to, and when we're not. And, you know, I think it comes back down to me too, besides the fact that evidence, like if you're going to accuse somebody of something, or you're going to say something, or you're going to present something, like what we're talking about right now, let's say we're talking about theoretical propulsion systems. If we're wrong, there's really like the consequences of that. There is none, really, right?
Exactly.
We're just wrong. And we've been fed misinformation, and we're sitting there playing around with it and doing these thought experiments in our head. And that's kind of fun, interesting. But then you get into where you start accusing people of murder and things like that. You need to be much more careful and much more deliberate and make sure that your facts align with reality much greater before you start getting into some of these other crazy things. But like you said, it comes down to evidence. What does the evidence say? And that's what,
Yeah, let me riff on that for a second, because as ironically, that was something Ian Carroll once said before I had my big following out with him. And when he actually researched stuff that wasn't just all Israel, and he actually researched the DIRDs, which are the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. It's not just the videos we have. When it comes to science, like, how do we know the science is real? How do we know the technology is real? There are scientific papers that are peer reviewed, that are by some of the world's top PhDs that are out there, but it's not the Neil deGrasse Tysons that you know out there. And I research these papers and go over them, including teleportation physics study, including traversable wormholes, negative energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions. Like, these papers are all out there to be seen, and that's evidence that at least somebody was taking these ideas seriously. And if you read through them, you'll find that there's actual, you know, there's merit to these ideas from the physics perspective. And then, like you said, if we're wrong, what does it harm? We're not really harming anybody with respect to this. I'm generally pretty careful about accusing people, and the only time I've gone really specific is when I had specific evidence, like Gorgon Stare technology. That Sierra Nevada Corporation makes that. There you go. But if we're right about any of the stuff we talked about, if that random guy on Twitter ends up being William McCasland, that'll be the most insane shit ever. But if we're right just about the science, then this means this guy was like one of the highest priority targets to disappear, and it should be a much, much, much bigger deal. And then if we're right about the science and stuff too, that also means that, like, this should also be a bigger deal, because this guy is directly connected to disclosure and has information that really could help change humanity in general. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's at least one more super chat. Chugi Live says, God bless. Glad you're recovering at the beginning, but I'm burnt out already with the Nancy and Charlie, everything being weird when it probably isn't, but cover it because it deserves as much attention as her. Yeah, like, you know, I've talked about this, and I'm going to continue to talk about this. I am so sick of talking about Candace Owens that I can't even tell you. That being said, I said this last night. I'm going to continue doing it, even though it's work and it's not necessarily fun. And by the way, it's springtime, folks. If you're watching my channel, we're going to be doing a lot more gun content. I got a bunch of stuff over there. So I am thankful for that reprieve. That being said, what is happening in this country that I can tell you for sure that the lies that are being generated and the damage that it's doing to our politic, the way that it's damaging our country, the way that, and we see where this is going. Now we have someone like, I can't stress how important I think what's going on. This is a psyop. And it's not even that sophisticated of a psyop, but it is one of the most effective psyops ever perpetrated on the American people, in my opinion. And we can see where this is going, where there are all these people that are around Candace Owens' crew and many others are saying, don't vote in the midterms. Just let whatever happens happen. And so that we can go back to the days of Biden. And I know there's probably people in this that are, you know, maybe you're Democrats, whatever else. But the point here is that we have these people pretending to be one thing, they're actually another. And now we have Candace Owens going out there and telling soldiers and service people to basically just abandon your oath. And I don't care. look, everybody has the right to protest the government. Everybody has the right to protest any sort of military action. Whether you agree with it, you don't agree with it, that's fine. Where I'm going to draw the line is when you're trying to subvert military discipline, period. And you're telling service members, don't fight for this war. You shouldn't be doing this. What your government is evil. You no longer should be fighting for them. You no longer should be, honoring your oath. Like when you take an oath of enlistment or an oath of commission, you're not saying, okay, I promise to do this. I'm going to risk my life as long as I agree with my leaders. That's not how this works. And when you're being subversive and traitorous, in my opinion, I don't think she should be prosecuted in any way. There's probably some things that she could be charged with. But with that being said, you're crossing a line where I think we as a public have the right to call out and say, you know what you're doing is wrong. It's immoral and potentially illegal, but I don't really care about that. I want the public to turn on her and say, this is where the line is drawn. I got out of the military because of specifically the Obama administration. I saw what he was doing to special operations. Was like, you know what, this just isn't worth it. What I didn't do is go around and tell my fellow service members, hey, you know what, Obama's crap. You really need to get out of the military. No, that's for them to decide on their own. And by the way, if you get dishonorably discharged, it's one of the worst things that can ever happen to you. You can no longer get a federal job. You're no longer going to be able to own a gun. You are not going to pass any background checks. She is telling people to go out and ruin their lives. And I have a real problem with that.
I want to add too, because that was a big turning point for me. I mean, that's too far for me.
Yeah.
When you're telling people to not serve military, to take up arms against our own military, or anything along those lines, like that's just straight up treason, right? Like, are you actually for America anymore at that point or not? Even if you don't agree with the current administration, to me, it's a line too far. For the people wondering, I have nothing personal against Candace Owens. She had me on her show, and people say, "Oh, I don't owe anybody anything." And my perspective is, it's not me that changed. She changed. Ian changed. I think my opinion is this: they saw an opportunity when Charlie Kirk died to use that to further their agenda, further their narrative, which is some kind of weird anti-Israel agenda.
Hate
I don't know.
I mean, that is their entire everything gravitates around hate Israel first. I've always been fairly indifferent to Israel, but what I can tell you is these people, like, no matter what they start to research, the breadcrumbs always end up to, hey, it's Israel, it's the Jews, it's just dumb. It's just low IQ nonsense.
And the reason why I went at them, let me just jump in here, because the reason why I went at them was that the first thing I saw was that they were never Charlie Kirk supporters anyway. Like people like Ian were hating on him. And so then for them to be like, oh, well, they were the ones saying that he was owned by Israel. And then they claimed, oh, well, Israel killed him. And it's like, it was the most obvious flip. And like, the guy couldn't defend himself because he's dead now. And to me, that's just disgusting to do that. I would never do that to somebody. So that was the reason why I turned on them right away, like way back in September, like the day after it happened, because I saw them doing that. And I think you're right. It's to the point where they have their free speech. They can say and do whatever they want. I don't really harp on them too much for it. But people should we live in a society that if we want to live in a civil society, then, people that believe in pleasant discourse should just kind of ignore them, essentially. Or push them aside.
And if we want to live in a civil society, truth has to matter.
Yeah.
The problem is that truth has become too relevant. We have this or a relative, like we've turned everything into this relativism where it's like, oh, well, she could be right. No, like if you're going to say these things, like come up with some evidence. Evidence still matters. And we should still have a logic, common sense approach to how we sift through information and determine what's real, what's not. And what people are doing is they're abandoning that. They're like, I like this idea, and I'm going to twist time and space so that this idea fits because this is what's going on. And that's how you leave yourself open to propaganda, because all I have to do is stand on the outside. You know what? The American people like this paradigm. So I'm going to push that paradigm, even though that it's not true, and I'm going to trick them into following me because I can tell that they are vulnerable to this idea or this set of ideas. And that's what's going on. And people are being manipulated, and it's very concerning to me. And Ashton and I were talking about this before. Folks, I'm just telling you from my experience and my personal thing. this costs me money. I have a business. The money the time that I put in that business is much more productive and profitable than anything I do here. Don't make a lot of money doing this stuff. It's really, it's a negative investment. I promise you, whether you believe that or not, it is. So, I just think it's really important. And number one, I just appreciate you being a truth seeker, a truth teller. I think you're doing great work, Ashton, and I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, and I just want to just one more question before we drop, which is that it's a good one related to this topic of the science and technology. People ask, like, could we ever build this? What would it take for us to build and prove some of this? Now, here's the harsh reality. You're never going to build something that's going to convince the world. And the reason why I know that is people have already done it. People have already built some of these over Unity machines, things like that. They've gone on tours showing them people, and it doesn't convince people because people aren't really ready to believe in that kind of thing. What you would really need to build to be able to convince people, you need the resources of the defense contractors or the federal government. And this is why what I tell people, if you really want to be trying to get on the cutting edge, what you should be doing is investing in the companies that the CIA and the government have already decided are going to be the next winners. And in my opinion, those are Helium Fusion and Tri-Alpha Energy. They're doing fusion in a completely different way that's in a smart way. And I think they already know they're going to be the fusion companies that are going to be like the $1 trillion fusion companies in the future. And you would say, oh, why don't you compete with them? Well, because I don't want to end up like Nuno Larerio or the General, right? It's like, that's the reason why you don't. That's the reason why President Trump owns half the company and not, Ashton Forbes.
Or end up like the guy that made a combustion engine or a vehicle that would run on water.
Stanley Meyer. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No. That's great stuff, folks. We really appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, I told Ashton I wouldn't keep him too long, but Ashton, I really appreciate you coming on. Domsey, thank you very much for contributing to the 10 Paramount Tactical memberships. For those that are following me, make sure you guys go follow Ashton. I put all his information down in the description below. And if you're following Ashton, come over and follow us. We have some great discussions as well, and I think you'll find it worth your time. Anything else you want to say, Ashton, before I get you out of here, man? Go enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you very much, Gary. These are great conversations. Let's do more in the future. I like this back and forth rational view, and I think we got a good dynamic going on here. We got the gun aficionado special forces guy, and then we got the physics
knuckle dragger. You got the knuckle dragger over here.
We're doing it's perfect. It's like spaghetti and meatballs.
All right, man. Well, listen, we appreciate you. You guys, hold on. I didn't hit this one, I don't think. Oh God, it keeps going away.
Oh yeah, so this is Chaotic Good, was one of my followers who researched the dirt. So guys, if you are a science buff or you just want to know more about it, check out the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, DIRDS. You can find them all in the Internet Archive very easily. My favorite papers ever. I mean, I've never seen a more extensive set of scientific papers about energy extraction, fusion propulsion, MHD propulsion, wormholes, dark energy, negative energy, warp drives, everything. They're the best. So thank you, Captain Good.
After we're done with this live, if you come back and watch this video, I will make sure that we will put. Anyways, I'm going to put the links to that down in the description below so you can go check that out. Well, listen, Ashton, we appreciate you, man. You stay safe out there. Have a wonderful weekend. Everybody out there that's watching, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, all those things, and we appreciate you as well. So continue to fight for the truth. That's all that really matters at the end of the day. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you.